Tropical Storm Nestor is headed to Florida. I'm Mike Naso with this video update on the tropics very early on Saturday morning, October 19th, 2019, with the latest on our tropical storm. It developed in the Gulf of Mexico, and it has been moving very quickly towards the Florida Panhandle and the Big Bend area of the west coast of Florida, and that is Nestor. Now, as of 1 a.m. Central, this is 2 a.m. Eastern time, we'll get a new update at 5. Nestor was at 28.8 north, 86.3 west, and it's already gone beyond these coordinates by now because it's moving northeast at 20. This is not a slow mover. After Hurricane Dorian about a month or two ago, not moving at all, it is nice to see a storm moving at 20 miles an hour, I'll tell you that. Winds 60 miles per hour, so it's a mid to strong tropical storm. It won't become a hurricane. And the reason is it's kind of caught up in this troughiness, and most of the bad weather is to the right of the storm, where the actual center of the storm is. So it's very lopsided, very naked around the center. Nevertheless, we do have tropical storm warnings out. Yankeetown all the way to areas here, the Big Bend of Florida. Not to mention the storm surge warnings out for areas like Clearwater Beach, where you'll have that onshore flow. As we saw with Hurricane Michael 1 year ago, storm surge is very dangerous here on the Panhandle and the West Coast. Of course, Nestor is a tropical storm, which looks horrible, and Michael was a well-organized, rare Category 5 hurricane, one of only 4 to hit within, 150 years? So there is no comparison between Michael and Nestor. But nevertheless, it is a tropical storm, and that's why we're covering it here tonight. Again, the models are pretty straightforward. Nestor is going to move through Georgia, the Carolinas, and it's going to bring that heavy rain on northeastward, and that's all going to be in advance of the center because it's so lopsided. There's the satellite imagery, and again, as I mentioned before, Nestor is very naked here. This is where the center of circulation is. Most of the heaviest convection is well to the right. We've seen many storms like this in the past, where it's very lopsided, and that's why you're having tremendous rainfall potential here right along the west coast of Florida. We've seen areas like Clearwater Beach in the last 24 hours, you guys have gotten over 2.5 inches, and that will increase as the rainfall moves in. But Nestor's center will probably be making landfall later on Saturday morning, and we'll have the official quote-unquote landfall of this tropical storm. Tornado watches are out. As you know, with landfalling tropical systems, there is the threat of severe weather and tornadoes. We have not liked this little band here of severe weather that's been hanging out north of areas of Orlando. Looks very, very dangerous. Right offshore Cape Canaveral, another very strong cell. And look at this. These are heavy rainfall rates moving right into the Sarasota, Tampa Bay area. Look at that, right in. And because of the slow motion of that band, you could get several inches of rain, and of course that could cause flooding, not to mention the onshore flow and the threat of the storm surge with this system. This is a very potent tropical storm, and it's bringing a nasty impact to western Florida. The rainfall, as I mentioned, is the greatest threat. However, it doesn't look as bad here on the 2-day map in Florida because the system is making landfall later today. However, as I mentioned, as it moves northeast, you're going to have that rain across the Carolinas, maybe as much as 2 to 6 inches of rain. So again, the good news is that Nestor is moving fast. We're going to get him up and out of here, but at the same time, it's going to be a wet weekend over areas of the southeastern United States as Nestor moves through. Here's the key messages for Tropical Storm Nestor as of 10 p.m. Central, 11 Eastern, and they still stand from the National Hurricane Center. Number 1, there is a danger of life-threatening storm surge up to 5 feet above ground level from Indian Pass to Clearwater Beach, where a storm surge warning is in effect. And you guys should follow the advice of local officials because, again, 5 feet of storm surge, that can kill. Okay, if you're 6 feet tall, you got 5 feet of water. You know how heavy water is? Don't mess around with it, not even with Nestor. Number 2, tropical storm force winds are spreading across the Florida Gulf Coast, and they have those watches and warnings out. Regardless of the exact track and intensity, those winds are going to cover a pretty large area, especially to the right side, as mentioned, the east of the center, because Tropical Storm Nestor is so lopsided. Number 3, flash flooding is possible with those heavy rain bands I showed you on radar, big time, for the central eastern Gulf Coast and southeast U.S. into Sunday morning. And of course, number 4, the wind and coastal flooding hazards along the East Coast, that'll be covered by the non-tropical watches and warnings issued by local National Weather Service offices, because once Nestor moves in and out, it won't be tropical anymore, and so that will not be covered by the National Hurricane Center. Remember Sandy back in 2012? It was a hurricane off New Jersey, and then it was no longer tropical. So when it made landfall in New Jersey, it was no longer Hurricane Sandy. It was a post-tropical cyclone. That's why they called it Superstorm Sandy, because the general public doesn't understand post-tropical. Once Nestor is no longer over water, it becomes caught up in a front, it becomes sprawled out and the wind's far away from the center, Nestor will no longer be tropical, and therefore no longer will have advisories issued by the tropical guys at the Hurricane Center. So that'll do it this time for Nestor. Pretty nasty tropical storm, definitely a rough night in the western areas of Florida, inside the southeast Gulf of Mexico. Blowing convection there well in advance of the actual landfall of the center. Landfall should occur somewhere along the Florida Panhandle in the general vicinity of areas, say, Mexico Beach, Panama City, Apalachicola. That's going to be where the actual center crosses, but of course the worst weather will be well to the right of that. And again, I know you guys went through a catastrophic record-breaking historic hurricane in the Panhandle last October. I want you to rest assured, Nestor could be a gully washer, but this is not a Category 5 hurricane like Michael. This is not a major hurricane of a Cat 3 or more. This is not a hurricane. It's a tropical storm, and as I mentioned, he's pretty naked over the center right now, so he will not be strengthening. But nevertheless, the threat of storm surge, gusty winds, heavy rain, and severe weather. So if you're in Florida, keep an eye on Nestor tonight. I'm Mike Naso, and I'll see you guys next time.